Today, I would like to take a few minutes to share with you how I chose to become a Christian and how my life has been since then. Now, to be honest, it's kind of a long story, but it's really worth the share. So get ready, because here it is. When I was 12 years old, I had wanted so badly to become a Christian because I was learning that it's about God saving us from our sin, adding us to His family, and making us a new person. My dad and I began studying together in September of 2007, and I slowly began to let some of those scriptures about baptism sink in. The weekend after we had studied, my family and I decided that it was time for me to get baptized. And on Sunday, September 30th, 2007, I, a 12-year-old 7th grader, was baptized for the remission of my sins. And it was the best day of my entire life. But shortly after that, I started looking at other fellow Christians and started thinking that they were all better than me for many reasons. Now, I don't want to go into details of what some of those reasons were, but I fell into the dangerous comparison trap and started getting frustrated with myself and my inability to keep God's commandments perfectly. Fast forward to 5 years after my baptism in September of 2012. I was a senior in high school and thought I had only grown slightly in my Christian walk, which, to be honest with you, is much better than no growth. I started to experience even more frustration, and it eventually got to the point where every time I screwed up, I thought, "Oh, I'm such a horrible human being. God doesn't love me anymore." I had heard sermons about how God requires us to do so many things in order to stay saved, and it made me think that God was dehumanizing me, and that He is never satisfied with me no matter how hard I try to please Him. Well, I came to find out that those thoughts were so false, and even though it's difficult to live for God, He still loves me and will always forgive me when I do fail Him. By the time I had reached my 10th Christian birthday in September of 2017, I was beginning to allow fear to paralyze me, and my attitude towards living for God began to get very negative. I really hated the fact that this life is hard and wanted so badly for God to make it easy so that I didn't have to make any mistakes or screw up. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Well, unfortunately, that is not realistic at all. I learned that if this life were easy, Jesus would not have had to die for us, and we wouldn't even need God. And it's a very terrible thought to think that I don't need God. As I neared into my 11th Christian birthday in September of 2018, I began to discover that all this frustration I was experiencing in my Christian life was actually growing pain. Turns out I was growing as a Christian, but it was very painful. I choose to emphasize growing pain because physically you cannot grow if there is no pain involved. And I really think that the same thing applies to spiritual growth as well. If there's no pain involved, then there is no growth. Today, in 2019, I am asking God for a joyful heart and to give me a serious attitude makeover. In February of this year, I will be 24, and I can honestly look back and say that I was never alone in my walk with God. With His strength, His word, and being surrounded by other Christians to share this life with, it is possible, not just for myself, but for everyone to live for Him. I want to encourage those of you who are new Christians to ask God for strength to live for Him, to embrace the pain when it gets hard, and to live joyfully to please Him. This life will never be easy, but I can promise you that it will be worth it. It'll be worth the struggles, the pain, and the strife, because really, they can make you into a much better person in the long run. The main thing to remember is that we walk by faith and not by sight. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7. Thank you.